Hello, everybody. Good evening. I am Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. We have a treat tonight, people. But before we get rolling, because this only comes up once a year, and I manage to screw it up every single time, but a big shout out to Mr. Charlie Mullins. Charlie is not just a crew member on the lifeboat. Charlie's literally been here so long that Charlie's just, I when people talk about the lifeboat, it just there's no way I could think about it without Charlie. There's never been a video the man didn't leave a comment on, and he's been here since before I was a channel. Just when I was watching things, he had actually subscribed. So much love. Happy birthday, Charlie. Doesn't look a day over 29 either. He's doing something right. Speaking of not looking a day over 29, my guest tonight. This is going to be a good one, people. This is something really, really interesting. There's never been an us and them thing on the boat. There really isn't. But sometimes when we talk, it sounds that way because we do refer to people that had been fortunate enough to not have our disease. We very often refer to as normies. Never had one on the show before, and as I started to get to know Christy, she's just a very fascinating human being, and the fact that she found the lifeboat. And the fact that there are things from everyone's past that make us all a lot closer than you think we are. It's a very, very unusual thing. But I'm going to shut up because I don't get to do that very often. And welcome, Christy. Christy, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Hi, I'm so happy to be here. This will be fun. I'm very excited.
This is going to be fun. I tend to sit there from time to time and think to myself, how do people get through life without this? And I don't mean, because obviously I'm doing it now, but what I mean is it astounds me that that the people who manage to get through life without ever at any point defaulting to, I'm just not going to deal with my own emotions, I'm going to use drugs or alcohol to do it. I'm fascinated by this. So walk me through high school, college, like when all of the years of people around you really starting to go nuts and party. What was that like?
So I think the biggest thing was I came from a very religious, strict background, and my family had very serious expectations for us. And we never were put into situations where we were around people that were drinking, even smoking, doing drugs. Like that was, my parents just kind of felt that as kids, we at that point probably didn't have the emotional tools to deal with that. So we didn't get put in that situation. And the one thing I never wanted to do was let my dad down. So that was like the biggest thing. And the other thing too, this is what my parents used to say to me, and this was before we have the understanding that we have now about it. But they would always say, if you do that, I mean, I remember specifically my dad saying, your demons only get stronger at the bottom of every bottle. So when you drink like that, it doesn't make anything go away. And what it does is it hampers your creativity and your ability to control your life. And you don't want to live in that situation because it will take over. And so for me, it was kind of one of those things of just learning from somebody who seen it. And although I am somebody, don't get me wrong, who bangs their head against a brick wall several times, some things I don't have to. So, I mean, I did drink and I did experiment a little bit, but I really didn't like how it made me feel. And I didn't like not being in control of my body because I'm a really tiny person. On my best day, I'm 5 foot tall. And I always weighed around like 95 pounds. And the people I was around were much bigger than me. And so even though I trusted them, I never really wanted to let go of myself that way. But then also, like I said, it was very religious and we had expectations. And the one thing I never wanted to do was kind of let my family down. And then I went to college, but I didn't go to college until after I was divorced from my ex-husband. So I was already at this point a single mom of 3. So my college experience was not like
dorm rooms, beer funnel, stupidity.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
No, and I've never done it. I'm so sorry. I've never done a cake stand or a beer funnel or,
Well, you didn't really miss out on anything
and that's
as
kind of
far
it.
as that goes. You didn't really miss out on anything. Oddly enough, I came from a almost exact same background. I grew up in a home that was deeply religious, and it was so much a part of what we discussed. And it's kind of a fascinating study, because I think it really does come down to, you said, yeah, I drank. It didn't grab me, and I experimented, but it just didn't grab me. And it's such an interesting study of the difference between you and me, and the difference between people in general. We all seek a way to get through this life, and for a lot of people, religion is a great tool for people who need a sort of a guidepost. It's absolutely saved my life, right? It absolutely has saved my life. But back when I was in it, I couldn't cope with just God, and I needed drugs. Did you ever find yourself with the inability to cope? Because normally, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but normally, normies all have a habit. With all due respect to the normies, they all have a habit, and it's always usually something that gets the same result as what we're doing. May not make any sense to people, but what I'm saying is we do drugs as a way to cope. I know that this doesn't make sense, but self-harm, people that do it as a way to cope, right? Because the release of the pain and the endorphins, everybody is sort of seeking that. Did you have a habit?
I did. So I was anorexic from the time I was 13 until I was in my late 30s. And actually on the Facebook group, I put a post about it. And I always said it from the time I was 13 until I was in my late 30s. But when I broke it down in years, it was 30 years that I was anorexic. And so I used that. So when my life was spinning out of control and I couldn't control anything, that is the one thing I could control, was what I did or did not put into my body. And so that was what started out as, so I was really bullied and picked on in school. My dad looked like he walked straight out of the 1800s. We were poor. It really, I thought it was an amazing childhood, but other people will find any reason to pick on you. Sure. And when I was at that age where especially, I can't speak to, boys, but girls are really, really trying to find themselves and very vulnerable. I had someone tell me that I would never fit in and I would never be pretty if I kept eating cheeseburgers that would make me fat. And their words, not mine. And so I took that and I smashed it in my heart and rubbed it all over my soul. And I did it because I thought, if I'm not perfect, I can't fit in. If I can't fit in, I'm going to continue to be bullied and everything like that. Well, fast forward until I was about 16 and things were really kind of crazy. We had moved from the state that I was born in to the state that I ended up, spending a lot of years in. And it just got to be so much. It was really difficult. And that was how I coped. And so I would, I had an aunt, actually, this is really crazy. And maybe some of you can relate to this. She was also anorexic. And she said, you have to let them see you eat, because if you don't, they'll constantly be on you. So at least eat in front of them. That way they're not trying to take you to rehab or a mental institution or something. So I learned that trick. And then I would make my lunch on the way to school. And then I'd walk by and dump it in someone's dumpster. And it actually got to a point where I did end up in the hospital a couple of times. And so, and then once I figured out with the therapist and journaling and just kind of where my life took me, I figured out that was my coping mechanism and why I did it. I was then able to say, okay, not only am I going to show myself, but the people that took me to the pits of despair, to quote Kelly Clarkson, A, B, C, D, E, F, U, right. I used that as my motivation to rise, because I was like, you took me here, you broke me. And although this was not completely your fault. It was my coping mechanism. You're as low as the pits of Hades you took me to is as high as I am going to freaking soar. So stand back and watch me. And then that became my motivation to just be so healthy that it was like, look where you were for that long and look at where you can be.
Man, I love this. I really do. It, I mean, it kind of shoots to crap the normie thing, but I have, I've always been of the firm belief that there aren't any. There aren't any
Right.
normies. Everybody goes and finds a way of coping, and sometimes it's super healthy. But the vast majority of us find something unhealthy because it just works easier, right? We go to the lowest common denominator. But you know, the most fascinating thing that you just said, and it really kind of floored me. Your aunt, you said, also had, she was also suffering with a eating disorder, and she kind of coached you in it.
Yeah.
See, that is absolutely fascinating to me. And there are parallels, you know, in the drug world. There are mad parallels. You know, you always have an older relative who comes over and says, "Hey, man, you know, breath mints, put some Visine in your eyes." You know, they were always sort of, you know, to try to look cool with the younger crowd. You know, we do drugs too.
Right.
But it's fascinating to me that your aunt would do that. That's just so bizarre.
And it's really messed up, right? Like what adult would look at a child that was that vulnerable and say, do eat the cheeseburger so that you don't go here. You know, I mean, at the time I was like, wow, she gets it. She's getting people off my back, you know. But now that, you know, when I kind of went through it, I was like, that is very toxic. And
oh my Lord.
Yeah. And I mean, if my parents would have known that, I think I think my mom probably would have thrown hands over it.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's legitimate blow and O-ring stuff right there. How old was your aunt at this point?
She was so if I think I was probably like 14. So she was in her 30s, mid 30s.
Oh my Lord.
I mean, she wasn't young. She was not young.
I was really hoping to give her an out. You know, maybe she was a very young aunt, you know, 18, 19.
She doesn't get an out.
My goodness. So 30 years. This was one of the messages. And you know, it's really odd. Well, it's not odd, I guess, because I think we know this inside, but just what you said, you know, this was an exertion. This was your ability to control something. If you couldn't control everything else that was going on in your life, there was one thing that you could control. And that's what happens to the addict, right? It's the exact same thing. We can get rid of all of those things that bother us if we just concentrate on the one thing that we can control. And that, you know, for a lot of us was putting poisons into our body. What was the catalyst at the 30-year or close mark that saved you?
So now I might tear up a little bit here, so bear with me. I glued on some eyelashes, so maybe I wouldn't cry so much. Okay, so what the catalyst was my ex-husband was cheating on me with a secretary. I was in my late 30s, had 3 kids. She was in her 20s, had 1. And there was a lot of narcissistic abuse there. And really bad. I weighed like 89 pounds at one point. I had tried to unalive myself because I thought I would be a better parent to my children not on this planet than being on this planet. And so after we divorced and I was just starting to get on my feet, I found out my dad had terminal colon cancer, which ultimately took his life 3.5 years later. So my brother showed up and he's like, Dad's going through this, Mom needs us. So we just dumped everything, moved back home with my mom. I went through all of that. So 3.5 years of basically watching my dad die, dealing with my kids, watching my ex seemingly be successful, right? And then once my dad was gone, I was broken. I didn't know what to do. I was on I should add, I was on a bunch of psych meds that I did not need. He had convinced the doctor that I was bipolar, which I'm not. So I was on 2,000 milligrams of Depakote, which
Oh my
is an
Lord.
insane amount. I was on 10 milligrams of risperidol, and then I was on something else, and I don't remember what it was. But I just looked at my life, and I was like, my dad just died. I literally watched my hero wither away. My marriage is over. My kids are young and I need to get my life in order. So I started going to therapy, had to get off the medications. And then, I was really fortunate. I do really good with tough love. And I had this therapist who's like, if you don't ever face this, you're never going to get past it, because until you can speak it into truth and say it, and see it and allow yourself to feel it and see it for what it is, this is what it's always going to be. And like I said, in my family, we say we have a sit down. I had a sit down with myself, and I was like, again, it really was the catalyst. Like, you have been as broken as any human being can be. I was never hit. Okay. Like, so that never happened, but in every other way, you have been literally as broken, and you can continue your life being broken and raise your children broken, or you can say to everybody who said you could not do it, and you can do it. And at first, honestly, it really wasn't even for me. I was so mad that it was to prove everybody who didn't think I could wrong, which, by the way, was only my ex.
Right.
But and it showed me that I could come out of it on the other side. And like I said, I took that and I just harnessed all of that, and I was like, okay, for everything you did to me, for every time you knocked me down and abused me and said I was awful and not worth it and horrible and everything, I am using that as my motivation to soar above anything you ever thought I could not be. And then it was more about my children. I wanted my girls to have a healthy view of themselves and life, and I wanted my son to know that strong women were good and something to be loved and adored, and not broken and taken down. And it really was, I guess, just my own like Irish stubbornness that's like, yeah, right.
I love the fact that the initial response that got you rolling was a little bit of angry instead of I do this all the time. You've probably heard me talk about it on the boat, but when you first get to a point where you're going to quit anything, right? Whether that be a habit, whether it be a drug, whatever. When you first get to the point where you're all in and ready to get that ball rolling, all of us experience the same kind of crap, whether it's right, whether it's drugs or whether it's an eating disorder. We have to push through that first initial, and anger sometimes is the greatest motivator in the world. I've worked with a lot of people who started off saying, I'm not ever going to drink again because my ex said that I couldn't do this. And sometimes that's just a fantastic motivator. And then over time, obviously, you start to fall in love with yourself again. But I love that. And the only other thing that I have to comment on, and it was so hard for me to not say anything right at the time, but I didn't want to interrupt you. All the time, this is something that comes up all the time with me. And you talk to women and they'll say, well, you know what? I wasn't physically hit. And I swear to you, I must hear that phrase 6 times a week. And it should be something that we should probably just assume that you weren't, right? That's the world that we ought to live in. But it's so messed up that we're at a point now where that kind of has to be said. You can abuse the hell out of somebody without putting hands on them. The worst punishments, and take this from a guy that spent time being punished professionally. The worst punishments have nothing to do with anything physical. You can rally behind pain. there's actually something to pain. The worst is always in the head. But so this is so the 30-year mark. What were you doing in your life at this point? Were you active in music? Were you?
No. So
Okay.
what I was doing at that point was really trying to get through my divorce and my dad's death and everything like that. And just define who I'm going to be, because what I always say is, uh, this is where I'm going to lose it.
You're good.
The person that went through all of that crap died. She died. She died a horrific, awful, painful, wretched, brutal death. And I was at the point where, was that in vain? Or was I going to take that and make it something? And so that's where I was. So really, it was, that's where I was. And then, I kind of like, got to the point where I did all that, and I started, really eating and exercising and being healthy. Um, and then I met my husband not too long after that. He's amazing and wonderful, and it's amazing what love can do. And somebody who's like, you're beautiful and I love you. And when you're not used to hearing that, and you're used to really, seeing the worst in yourself all the time, to have somebody who's wonderful and handsome and everything, like, love you back. Because at that point I had to learn to love myself, because I had to learn how to receive love. And I was at that point. And so it really kind of all fell together. And once I understood my triggers, how I manage stress, why I was doing it, it was really easy then for me, because I'm a very I'm a very methodical, intellectual person. So I'm like, okay, I do this because of this, and it causes this, and this is the result. I don't like it, so I'm going to do this. Right. And so that's how I got through it. But that's about where it was.
I hope that everybody heard that. I hope everybody really actually paid attention to the last part of what you just said, because once again, the parallels are just thick. But she took care of herself, right? She was messed up. She knew that she had to completely redo who she was. She started eating right, started working out, started changing everything about who she was, because the initial, the person that needed a crutch, right, needed to be able to control something, to feel any kind of control over any part of her life, was dead. And that is such a, most of us in recovery, you'll hear people say that all the time, that dude's dead. Right. And I'll tell you, the guy that I was born is absolutely dead to me. And it was so much more than drugs. But, when, and in a very similar situation, when you're living that life, it's obvious to a lot of people that obviously you're having problems, but we lie to ourselves, and we do everything within our power to continue, doing things. And again, it's such a perfect, example of an addiction. When we define addiction, we say it's the continually doing something that we know is so damn bad for us. I mean, for those 30 years, I got to figure you weren't feeling particularly healthy.
No. And, my body, I think I heard you say this a few days ago or something, but my body actually is paying for that, because when you stress your body like that, my heart is weaker. Because of all of the medication that I was on for years that I did not need. My kidneys are not as good. My liver, your liver can kind of repair itself a little bit. Your liver will bounce back. But everything else, like even now, even though and this is really weird, and I didn't understand this, but being 47 years old, I will get really hungry at night and raid the fridge. And I just kind of thought, that's menopause, whatever. But no, it turns out, because your body, as an anorexic, is so used to going without food and then needing to like calorie dump, right. Your body does that. And so even me at night, getting up in the middle of the night to raid the fridge is still left over from that. It's physical. It's not left over mentally. It's left over physically. And so there are things that I've figured out to not do that, like flaxseed and water before I go to bed. It makes me not hungry, and it helps me to sleep through it, so that way I can be healthy. But there's a lot that's left, and getting down to like 89 pounds is not healthy.
I struggle really hard to wrap my brain around that. Even at 5 feet tall, that's just that's really, really light.
hurt so bad. You could see all of my vertebrae, and to even cover up hurt because like my bones were exposed. Like
Yeah.
not exposed. That's wrong. Like you could see them.
I know what
And
you're saying.
you know, and you there was a lot put on me to be a trophy wife, and I am not you want a trophy wife, go get a really beautiful blonde Norwegian. Like, don't pick the folks that have it, right?
Always a blonde when somebody says that. They're a brunette trophy wise. Anyway, yeah.
But you know, even having that stress on me to, you know, having been told, you know, I'm important in this company, you need to look good. That put an added stress on me that I did not need. So there was a lot of layers of it that really had to be uncovered. Most of it I truly did through journaling, and it really, what these are the two questions I asked myself: why and how does that make you feel? And I'll pick one thing and I'll be like, why did you do it? How did that make you feel? Why did you continue? And I just go down this rabbit hole. And then I also, kind of like I've mentioned before, I ask that to people because if I don't know how to react to something, I want to know what you're thinking. So I'll be like, how do you feel about that? And
Right.
somebody be, oh, it's awesome, or well, I'm not so excited. And you know, if they say it's awesome and it's healthy, then I'm like, go you know. And if they're like, well, I'm not really sure, then I'm like, fine.
Continues the process. I love the fact that that you can plug journaling. Obviously, this is it's kind of the backbone of everything that I say. So anybody that comes on and says that journaling was the key to self discovery, I'm obviously a huge fan of that, and I love the fact that you're continuing to do it because it's
Yeah.
you know, once you get your life in order, that's when journaling gets even better. And like the
Yes.
journaling changes as you change. You notice this? Like in the very
It,
beginning, it's almost just rage. And then over time, you start to get poetic and, you know, you write some things that are beautiful and then you go back through it. Over the
yeah.
last 8 years, I definitely have taken that roller coaster. But if I'm not taking time to journal, I'm in trouble. It's plain and
Yeah.
simple.
Well, I just had something kind of blow up on me over the last couple of days, and I was up late last night just writing it all down. I mean, and half of it didn't make sense, but you know, I got it out. And
Right?
some of the journals from back then were really awful, and they came from a very bad place and
Sure.
bad energy and bad juju. So I went outside and I piled them all up and I lit them on fire and I danced around him and I let him go up into the heavens. And I was
Good for
like,
you.
see ya, you know, because I didn't want to keep that around. I didn't want to find it later on. You know, it
Sure.
had served its purpose. And I didn't need to go back to that. Um, you know, so I was just like, all right, well, she's dead. Let's just cremate the journals.
I love it. I really do. I absolutely love it, especially when you know the stuff that's really dark. There are parts of my journal that when I get to, I'll just skip. Like even if
Yeah.
I go back and study the things that I've written. Like sometimes something that I wrote in September of last year. You know, you're looking back through. You know, how did I feel at fall last year? And you start looking for things that, and that book will really tell you what's going on in your life. I think it really is fascinating. If people aren't seeing this, then they're slow on the uptake because everything you've said. If we started this interview over again, and nobody here knew you were a normie, and we substituted right anorexia, and we
Yep.
just put the word cocaine in there, like no one would know the difference, or if we put the word heroin or booze or anything else, because the habits that we do that we know are bad for us, yet we continue to do them. Right, the definition of addiction, the stuff that we do to get by, really needs to be healthy. And I hope that you're hearing Christy say, I journal, I eat right, I work out. Like she's figured out what to eat before she goes to bed so that she's not going to be hungry. This is planning the journey ahead. And whether that journey ahead is for people that are trying to live sober or someone that's trying to get over something as heavy duty as anorexia, that's something too that is deeply personal to me. I had a friend. I actually dated this girl's sister, but it was somebody from my hometown who she was not so lucky. And she was living in Hawaii, and she died from it. Anorexia killed her. So thank God that you crawled out of it, and thank God you crawled out of it with the attitude that you have. So now you do really cool and exciting stuff, right? You didn't just make a comeback. Like, you made a comeback. You have a very interesting existence. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Well, right now, I'm living in this beautiful house in Kentucky. We just are finishing up an album, and so I can tell you a little bit. This is really funny. We had a track, and we needed a drummer, and so we hired this guy, threw him a couple $100, was like, "Hey, come drum on this track for us," whatever. Did it. And the guy really liked it. Turns out he was a studio musician for some really big names, had connections in the industry, sent that particular song over to a small indie album indie label. I'll get to who that is in a minute. They loved it, wanted all of our demo stuff. It all got sent over. They said, "We like these 3 songs," one of which I wrote. I was really excited about. And they said, "Write 5 more songs. We'll give you an album deal. You can go on tour." Turns out that small indie label was Sub Pop Records. And if you know anything about grunge, that's the label that gave Nirvana and Soundgarden their start. So, and they found us. So that was really exciting. So we're finishing that up. And that's my best friend is the lead singer of that band. So it's really amazing. And then together we also started a candle company, which has been taken off, and we've got our stuff in 3 different states right now: New York, Kentucky, and Kansas, and we're looking to pick up another location here. So it's been a lot of doing that. My kids are all successful and great, and I got grandkids, and my husband travels on the road. He's in Alaska right now. So, get to do a lot of traveling, but
you're doing something right, Christy, because anybody that tuned into the Lifeboat in the last couple of minutes didn't go, "Grandma," right? Probably not the first thing that came to mind for anybody that just recently popped up on the Lifeboat. So you're obviously, but I have a question. This is a very serious one, because this is something that plagues people like us, right? The non-normies.
Right.
How do you deal with success? Did you find that as you started to become successful, the desire to control crawl back into your life at all?
No, because I knew how detrimental that was. And so what keeps me grounded is, you guys talk about having your 5. I have my 3. And these are 2 of them. Well, one of them is, I've known, I'm 47. She is only a year younger than me, and we grew up together. The other one, she has known me since middle school, and then of course Veronica. And I will tell you this, my brother and my sister-in-law are some of the most grounded people. My nephews are amazing, and my brother will never let me get too big for my britches. Like, he's my younger brother, but he has no problem like slapping that down and just be like, "Don't forget from whence you came." But I think too, it happening later in life, it wasn't like that whole I don't know myself, let alone I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. At this point, I know my pitfalls, and I know when I'm getting to the point of, okay, I'm getting really stressed. Like, I literally did that. So I got so comfortable, I put on an extra 20 pounds, and I really needed to lose it, because then I was overweight, which I had never been. But in the process of doing that, I was really aware, okay, I do have to do this to be healthy, but I've got to do it in a good way. And so, I called my friends. So my friends, my family, they're there for me, but they are not afraid to be like, "No. You're still a rancher's daughter who grew up in rural Kansas. Get over yourself."
I love it. I honestly do. It is the biggest pitfall for people in addiction. You're in. Me personally, I'm a great example. I'm 4 times more likely to be screwing up if things are going really well. What happens is our baseline for a lot of us in addiction, our baseline is failure. So it is the emotion that we're used to. It is everything in our life kind of always happens and takes place while we're not being successful. So we go out of our way to short circuit our own success so that we can get back to our brain being comfortable. It's a terrible thing. It really is. But it's excellent that you got a support network in place. That's fantastic. And so a business and I mean, they're really two businesses, right? I mean, the music at that level, that's so exciting. We have a lot of talent on the Lifeboat. We really do. We have an awful lot of talent here, and it's amazing to get to meet people and to sort of check that out. How old are your kids?
So, well, I've got a blended family. I've got 8 kids actually and 6 grandkids, but my biological children are 26, 21, and 20. My 2 youngest are only 14 months apart. So one is a mom, and she's got 2 kids. The other one is going to school to be a doctor, and she is about to get married. And her fiance had an amazing opportunity through the Army. He was picked because he was in the top percentage to be an Army flight medic. So they're getting ready to do that. And then my son is just very private, but he is doing a good job. He's working in the trades, and he's doing HVAC and learning how to weld. And so, you know, I'm so proud of them all. It's crazy how different they all are, but yeah. So
how long has it been since your incident, since you realized that you needed to get yourself back under control?
You mean since it stopped the first time? Because it really kind of hasn't like started since then, like that.
Right. No. Yeah. How long has it been since you got healthy?
October of 2012. That's when my dad died.
Awesome. So a long time, and you're still feeling the physical effects. You know what? I hope everybody's listening to this. I don't care what you're doing to yourself. If you're 18, 19, 20 right now, really think about what you're doing to your body. You know, it's one of those situations that, just take my word for this one, right? You're going to get 50 and the doctors are just going to keep ticking off one thing after another that needs to be fixed or isn't working. And you're going to think, you know what? It wasn't worth it. Right. All of that was not worth it.
And it was one thing that I knew ahead of time, actually, was that, you know, they had told me, because of the level that you went to and how long you were there, you will have problems when you get older. So this isn't a shock for me.
Right.
And so that's why I really read labels, and I'm very careful now. I do think it is maybe still a little bit of that control. You know, I'm still controlling what goes into my body, but in a healthy, positive way, not a way that is like.
Well, and it's also not the only thing in your life that you're concentrating on, right? It's just a healthy part of everything you're doing. I was incarcerated, and they had a problem. They, being the white boys, had a problem with staff, and it was determined that the white boys were going to go on a hunger strike. This was not something that was it was not open to debate, right? You're going on a hunger strike kind of a thing. So we all gave up food for a while, and I remember after it was over, we only made it about 6 days. But when it was all said and done and over, there was somebody that came out and said, you know, he did it for 126 days and actually removed him from the federal system and had to take him to a hospital and all that. But he said, and I've never been the same. You know, he had done it like 7 years earlier, and he said, just that one. He said, I have never been the same. It was the dumbest thing that you know, he had ever done to himself. But, you know, like everything else, right? At least you stop the bleeding, right? When the damage stops, at least you're not doing anything more. You know, I have solace in knowing that I'm not doing anything worse to my body these days. You know, just the stuff that I've already done.
Right.
And I love the fact that your kids are grown and that they're doing well. See, one of the other things that would scare the hell out of me in my life, my two children, right? I worry so much about them because I'm they're the the prodigy, right. Dad's a drug addict, mom's a drug addict, right? A grandfather on one side was an alcoholic, so a drug addict, and it's frightening. That I'm always afraid that I'm going to pass on. Have you been open with your kids? Have you had the conversations with them about this?
Oh, my kids seen it.
Well, I know they saw it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, that 89 pounds would have been difficult to.
Yeah, my son not so much, but my daughter's definitely. My middle daughter, she asks a lot of questions, and she, so I feel like when you're honest about what happened and what it did to you, that's knowledge, right? And knowledge is power, and so from
Absolutely.
that, it it it, it empowers people to make a good decision. So yeah, I've never really hidden anything from my kids. Just because one, I'm really horrible at that. Like it's all over my face if I'm not being honest with you.
Right.
So, um, but I did. And as far as how bad it got, they were really little. And the one thing I didn't want to do, as bad as their dad was to me, they had a right to choose their relationship with their dad, and I was never going to stand in the way of that. So I never really, especially when they were younger, said because of A, it caused B, which related to C. And I always,
Right.
especially when my middle daughter asks, I'm like, we'll go a little bit down this road, but there's a point where some of it really isn't your business. So I'll tell you what you need to know, but I'm not going to expand because I also don't. I mean, my parents were married until the day that my dad died. But the one thing I never want to do is take away an opportunity for them to have the kind of relationship with their dad that they want, you know?
Yeah. No, I think, and it's a shining, it's another shining example for far too many people. Um, Anything mental, right? If we have anything that we have to work on that falls between the left and the right ear, it has to come with a really good dose of shame. And for a lot of us, it's something that we're really proud of you. Don't mention it to anybody, though. You know what I mean? There's no reason to talk about it. I think that being honest with your kids is essential. And like you, there were certain things that, for sure there was no hiding. You disappear for over a decade, and obviously, right, they knew where dad was. But I don't lie to my kids either. And you got to feel fantastic as a parent when your kids are asking you questions about what you're talking to them about. The fact that there's really honest and healthy dialogue going back and forth. Yeah, I think it's phenomenal that you were able to come out of that, and I think it's a testament to how far you've come that you can come on here and talk about it as openly as you do. This is and for anybody, if you're suffering with an eating disorder, please talk to somebody and get help. This is something that affects a lot more people than and again, it's something that people don't talk about. I think if you remember, because you're close enough to my age to remember. Do you remember the Carpenters? Karen
I
Carpenter.
do.
There was
I
an
do.
awareness after Karen died that for a couple of years it really sort of there were some movies and just some awareness. There's a lot of people talking about it, but it's fascinating, truly fascinating to look at what we do as human beings. This is just one more example of what you did to gain control. And there's a million other the people that pick this apart. I'll get emails that are going to crap all over me. There's a million other angles, and I understand that. But the fascinating thing for me is the correlation between the two. The one of the things that disturbs the crap out of me, and I was just talking to somebody about this today. I don't remember exactly who I was talking to about this today, but the number of images that a girl sees before she's 13 that have been airbrushed, touched up, played with, to the point where they're not even looking at real people anymore. But the number of images they see before they hit the age of 12 has a lot to do with this. there's nobody that ever is going to, Barbie has a 72-inch inseam, right? I'm 72 inches tall. So if Barbie existed, her inseam would really be something to look at. But that's kind of what we did to girls. And I have really, it's something that I read a couple of books about it while I was in prison. It has a lot to do. This is a disorder that leads many, many people to drink and drug. So there was actually a decent amount about it, but it was something that I always talk to my daughter about, and just say, you realize the people you're seeing on those signs don't exist, right? They're not real. And I've had this conversation on the boat before. I was very, very close friends for a period of time with a girl who posed in Playboy. She was a bunny, and if you saw the spread, there was so little between who those, you would look at it and go, what the hell? And she would, say, well, they took 2 inches off here, and they took, and they absolutely create people that don't exist and hurt a lot of kids in the process, a lot. And I think that this is an issue that we're now seeing. I could go down a rabbit hole right now that would cost me about 600 subscribers in 3 minutes, and I'm not going to do it. However, suffice to say that this is something that we need to talk about more. I'm really, really appreciative that you came on here. If you've never done this, if you've never had somebody interview, especially when Christy says, and this has been every guest, so do you call about an hour beforehand and, we figure out, I go, no, I don't do that. We call 5 minutes beforehand, and the questions that I ask you, I'll be hearing your answers for the first time, just like the audience. And that takes guts, because you don't know what I'm going to do. Obviously I don't try to, to jam anybody up, but you never know how much somebody is willing to divulge. I think it's really courageous. I really do. And I guarantee you that this is going to help someone in the exact same situation. I used to say all the time in these interviews, this might just reach somebody. And then over the course of a couple of years of doing this, people call and say, hey, I saw Rip Curl Readiness's interview, and it made me, and I've just come to realize that I guarantee you this video is going to find who it needs. It takes it takes a lot of guts, and I am so happy that you came on here and did this. So when does this album come out, and do we have any where can we find this thing?
So you can't find it yet because it's still in production, so we're keeping it under wraps, but as soon as it does, I will let you know. The name of the band is Nightshade Alley, and it'll come out sometime next year. And everybody's talking about going on tour, which is really hilarious, because I'm like, oh yeah, who wants to see a bunch of 50-somethings up on stage? But I will definitely share. We're still trying to get everything like mastered and copyrighted and everything like that. So I do have to be a little careful about what goes out there.
Yeah, understood.
Not that anybody
NDAs, right? They don't want you talking about things. But that is, I thought V said cool name. I thought so too. That's very, very cool. And I don't know. I don't think you should necessarily write off the Who Wants to See the 50-Year-Olds. Very, very funny. I've talked about my memory in the past and certain things that just really stick out. I remember really distinctly standing in my living room and listening to Grace Slick from the Jefferson Airplane being interviewed.
Yeah.
At that point, they had become Starship, and she had just come off tour, and she said, I'm 60 years old. I'm a grandmother. Nobody wants to see old people dancing on the stage. Can you imagine Mick Jagger doing what he does at 70? And now here we are. And Mick's been selling out stadiums since the day she said that in the 80s. She went to Maui and retired, but and she owns a gallery and just has fun over there. But I think you'd be really surprised at how much people just don't care. If the music's good,
I'm definitely going. I am all about experiences in life, and I want to have those kind of experiences that my grandkids are like, wait, Granny did what?
Right? I mean,
That's what I want.
honestly, how cool is that to tell? How cool is that to tell your to your friends? My grandmother's on tour. Really doing what? No, she's in a band. Yeah, that's awesome. That really is. That's freaking
Short
awesome.
brunette Stevie Nicks.
You know what? I was a huge Stevie Nicks fan growing up. I really was. I actually got backstage to one of their concerts once, and she wasn't there, but Christy McVie was, and
She's
her husband.
great.
Yeah, no, I was a huge fan of that band, but she's really gotten kind of odd in her later years. She's just a really odd woman, but I dig her music. I've always been able to kind of separate the odd things that people do from their music. But I am so happy that we did this and that we had you on. Before we leave, though, I would really be amiss if I didn't talk about kind of what our first correspondence was about a relative, correct? Mm-hmm. And you don't have to disclose anything about anything. I just really was so impressed by this. And like I said, this will have an effect. I read a letter the other night that it's already having an effect. We're already seeing normies that are coming here and checking things out, and it's having an effect. It's really it's changing things. But I wish everybody that had a relative that was struggling with drugs or alcohol reached out to somebody who was an addict and said, "Is there anything you can tell me? Is there any pointers?" You know what? There really isn't. I mean, honestly, it's so different in every single situation that if you just show people that you care and you're, constant and continuous in the I'm going to be here and I'm going to care, and you might fall and but I'm going to be here and I'm going to care. That's about the best that we can do. But nobody does that, Christy. Nobody does that. In 2 years of doing the lifeboat, you were the first person that ever reached out and said, I would really like to learn as much as I can before my relative is put back into a situation that's going to be tough. I'm blown away by that. And go ahead.
It only made sense to come here because it started off by seeing you on Growing Up in Scientology, obviously heard about it. And then when I found out what had happened, I was like, because I am that type of person, if I don't have the answers, I'm going to go to somebody who does and who knows. And I thought, who can I go to? And I didn't know anybody. And then I remembered you guys, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to type a comment, and they'll either tell me to bugger off or, hey, come on over. And I was so glad you guys were like, and the most amazing thing, and this is a really big deal to me, was that you didn't treat me like I was stupid because I didn't know. You weren't like, well, and it made it a lot easier for me to be honest and continue. And so she got out of rehab. Somehow she left and then disappeared for a while and then showed back up and she was in there, and then she's now disappeared again. So, I'm just kind of at the point where it's like, look, I love you and I'm here, but I don't know where you are. And I figured the only thing I can kind of do is just wait until she reaches out or does whatever she's going to do. I'm sorry, this camera's backwards and my hair keeps until she does whatever she's going to do. And I figure at this point, if there's not really anything I can do, then I just pray for her and send her love and wisdom and understanding and compassion. And
this is the bane of my existence, and a question that I get asked 3 times a day. Are there people who can't be helped? And of course, to sit in this chair, you have to say, no, I don't believe that there are people who can't be helped. Right. The reality is there are people we don't save, right? And there's a lot of them. The vast majority we do not save. That does not mean that they couldn't be saved, right? It meant that we couldn't. Doesn't mean that the next group of people that try, but it's, it's a really, really interesting gig. I'm very, very happy that I started the lifeboat, but it certainly has taken on a life of its own. And I love the fact that your openness and your ability to, to come here and just share has already started to bring in people that are making a difference. I don't know if you heard the letter, but a normie from that found us over on the channel. She's not a normie, I guess, technically. She's been sober for since the early 90s. But because of a video she saw, she kind of caught her grandson nodding. And when she confronted him, he came clean. And they drove him to a rehab. So it's already bearing fruit. I want to thank you. And we are absolutely going to be the first group of people to chomp at the bit to get that album. Another musician. We have so many. Honestly, we have so many musicians. If we put a band together, it'd be a great band. We have some very, very talented musicians here. Kind of amazing.
There you go. I'll write the songs.
There you go. Right? We got this. All right, people. There is no cat in the basket. Let me tell you what happened today. I left Squirrel in the garage too long, and Squirrel actually ate half a mouse. She normally Squirrel will play with them forever, and then when I go in, she lets them run away, and she just comes inside. It's like see you tomorrow kind of a thing. But I found a half a mouse today, so Squirrel has been since then. She's kind of parked herself near that door. Kind of a bummer, but that is the way. Thank you so much, Christy. Please keep us in the loop. And sadly, I'm going to have to steal the Queen of the Normie title, because truthfully and honestly, you beat a pretty tough addiction, and I hope everybody sees that. There was a comment from Quiet Girl that said Karen Carpenter was an icon. And not just because of her music, but because it brought awareness to this. And there can't be enough awareness. There can't be enough awareness of anything that people need to quit. Right? The more awareness, the more there are people who are willing to help. So exactly. Keep that up. All right. God bless everybody, and we will see you on the boat. I am Captain Tommy. Thank you again, Christy. You're great.
You're so welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, this was fun.